So I was on TikTok. I was scrolling, you know, my usual scroll of the day, and I came across this TikTok.
Throughout the 19th century, doctors used pelvic massages involving clitoral stimulation to help cure women of hysteria.
Girl, what? I was like, ain't no way that this was a thing. Why didn't knew this until now? Okay, so I went down the rabbit hole of hysteria. I went down the rabbit hole of the Victorian era and how doctors used to treat this disease or whatever, and how this thing of the hysteria and the treatment was kind of like the start of the invention of the vibrator. I want to share with you what I found out, okay? We need to go back to ancient Egypt. Here in ancient Egypt is where the first case of hysteria was documented, or that we know of. They thought that hysteria was the spontaneous movement of the uterus. You know how the uterus is located in the pelvic area? So they thought that the uterus had like little legs or something, and it was like walking around. You know, the uterus was here in the pelvic area, and then the next day it was here next to the heart, and then the other day it moved here to the stomach. I don't know, it was just going around the body, right? So what was the treatment for the woman that suffered hysteria back in ancient Egypt? What they used to do, if they thought that the uterus was around here in the chest, they will give the woman unpleasant scents of something, I don't know, poop scent. Give it to her so she could smell it. Then the uterus would smell the poop as well. And the uterus, let's say that it was here, wouldn't like it. So the uterus said, you know what, I'm gonna go back to my original location. Or they will place pleasant scents, I don't know, flower scents, fruity scents.
This is definitely fruity.
Near the vagina of the woman, so the uterus would smell it. The uterus was here and you place the scent over here. Uterus will smell it and go back to its original location. Yeah, I know we're not supposed to judge, but that shit is kind of funny. When we go to the Greek era, Mr. Plato came up with the idea that women that didn't have a fulfilling or normal sex life would go crazy. And then Mr. Hippocrates, he was the one that came up with the word hysteria. And he also believed that the uterus was moving around the female body, because if you didn't have a fulfilling sexual life, your uterus was producing toxic fumes and it was wandering around the body. So that's why you went a little bit crazy. You went in hysteria mode, and you needed to have a healthy sexual life so your uterus will go back and be calm, cool, and collected. And he said that if you were unmarried or if you were a widow, no baby, you needed to get married and get laid so you could like keep your uterus under control. So when I read this piece of information, it's kind of hard to not think, what if this man, Mr. Plato, Mr. Hippocrates, knew that what they were saying was full of shit, and they were just trying to come up with excuses just to make women have sex with men and procreate and whatever. I don't know. I'm just saying, it crossed my mind. The thought of this man knowing that the uterus was not moving around and they just came up with this shit just to make women get laid, that thought crossed my mind. I don't know though. So then in the Middle Ages is where things start to get a little bit more crazier, because back in the Middle Ages, the woman was considered a failed man. So she was considered the inferior sex. Kind of similar to now, if you ask me, because I feel like still women are considered inferior to men, which is a whole lot of shit. But anyway, in the Middle Ages, if a woman was presenting hysteria type of behavior, meaning maybe she had anxiety, maybe she was depressed, maybe she had some sort of mental illness, and the doctor didn't know what was wrong with her, he just thought she was crazy, take a wild guess what the diagnosis of that will be. Yeah, you guessed that right. She was a witch. She was working with the devil. She was demonic.
Escucha las palabras de las brujas, los secretos escondidos en la noche. Los antiguos dioses invocamos ahora la obra de la magia oculta.
And she needed to be treated as such. And what was the treatment for demonic, devil, witches? Death.
Death to all of them.
Girl, I can't. The Middle Ages were kind of insane. Now let's go from the Middle Ages to the Victorian era. Why I thought the Victorian era was in like the 1400s? Girl, it was literally not that long ago. It was in the late 1800s, early 1900s. That's not that long ago, girl. But anyway, when we go to the Victorian era, there were several things happening with women of that time. First, a lot of women were fainting. Some people argue that it was because they were wearing very tight corsets that wouldn't allow them to breathe properly, so they will faint. Other people would argue that it was because of their makeup. It had toxic material, so when they applied their makeup and smelled it, fainted. Fainting was one of the symptoms of hysteria. So the women that were fainting were not necessarily believed to be because of the corset or because of the makeup that they were using at the time. It was thought that the cause of the fainting was because of the wandering uterus. So one thing they would do, they would smell salt, so the uterus will go back to its normal place. But if the hysteria was too crazy, let's say that particular woman was not only fainting, but she also had anxiety, shortness of breath, irritability. If she was expressing more symptoms of hysteria, then they would give another treatment. So the treatment was that the doctor would insert his fingers into the patient's vagina and drive the woman into hysterical paroxysm. The hysterical paroxysm was actually an orgasm. We need to understand that back in that time, in the Victorian era, something wasn't considered sex unless there was penetration. So if the doctor was inserting these two fingers, there was nothing sexual about it. Now, when I'm reading this, I couldn't help but think, what if these doctors knew that the woman was actually having an orgasm, but they were playing dumb? You know, because it's like, first of all, just the fact that you're touching the genital area, constantly touching it, you should know that, you know, there's something going on. One. Two, if you see this woman screaming, moaning, blushing, she can't breathe, and she's like arching her back, it didn't cross your mind that maybe she's having an orgasm? I just can't believe that these doctors didn't know what they were doing. Listen to this, the doctors were fingering so many women, so much, that they were suffering from cramps in their hands. It's so hard to believe that these doctors didn't know what they were doing. That brings another question, like the woman didn't know what was happening? Because I believe more if the woman didn't know what was happening than if the doctor didn't know what was happening, because the women were not doctors and maybe the woman believed everything that the doctor said. So if he said, oh no, this is just medical, then she was like, okay, I guess this is just medical, right? But maybe also the woman knew, because it's like, oh my god, the hysterical paroxysm feels so good, I want to go every day to the doctor. Or maybe they didn't like it. I don't know, right? I wasn't there. But I'm just saying, it's a little bit hard to believe that the doctor especially didn't know what the was going on.
That's suspicious. That's weird.
But you know how men are. If men know how to do something, it's a lie.
Liar!
In the Victorian era, there was this doctor, Joseph Mortimer Granville, and he invented the vibrator. Now, something that people think that is actually incorrect is that the vibrator was for usual sex. No, the vibrator that he invented was for muscle aches, or like for you to put it in your face to not have wrinkles. You know, it didn't have a sexual goal, the vibrator that he invented. And he actually said it, that the purpose of the vibrator was not to be sexual. It was mainly for male use too, because he said it, okay? There's a movie called Hysteria that more or less tells the story of, you know, the hysteria in the Victorian era and the invention of the vibrator. But apparently the doctor Joseph Mortimer Granville never worked with women. He never wanted the vibrator to be sexual. So the movie Hysteria has a few details and a few facts that are actually wrong. Because apparently the doctor Joseph Mortimer Granville was not given the hysteria treatment to women. But the movie is still good. Like if you want to see what was going on with the woman, you know, I watched it, it's okay. But when you go and actually check the story, it's wrong. The story is wrong. It was not until later that they kind of like made a version of the vibrator for the woman to make it sexual, you know? So that's a little bit like of a misconception that I found out. That's pretty much the story of hysteria and the vibrator. It's a little bit hard to believe that this man didn't know what was going on. Like really, the uterus is wandering around the body?
Huh?
So why the uterus wanders around the body and the heart doesn't move, or the stomach, it's just the uterus? It's just because they want to target women. It's always the same shit. It's always the same shit. The woman, the failed male. The woman is crazy. The women are witches. And it's crazy to me, this is just my opinion, but I want to share it with you. It's crazy to me that men are always thinking that the woman is the inferior sex. And let me tell you why. She's the one that's carrying the baby for 9 months. She's the one that gives birth to the baby. She's the one. Whenever I see these history things that men always think that women are inferior, I get so upset. Sorry, I went on a little rant right there. I'm sorry. I just get a little bit frustrated when I keep seeing the same story over and over again about how women are mistreated and how women are the inferior sex. It's just not it, and I'm not having it. Because you men, you couldn't live without us. Yeah, let's keep it real. So shut up. I've had it. But anyway, I just wanted to share this little piece of information with you. I found it so interesting that they thought that the uterus moved around the body, and that they thought, oh, let me finger her just so she can come into hysterical paroxysm. Let me know what you think of this. Let me know if you knew about this hysteria facts. Let me know if you like this video. If you liked it, definitely like and subscribe, and I'll see you when I see ya, okay? Bye.